It is 7/11 on June 1st of June, 2013, on Saturday. And this is the Salim MuWakkil Show. Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. To stream online, just go to www.wvon.com. And if you hear my voice, it is clear that you've reached that place where we reflect on the news of the week and try to make some sense of it all. We want to provoke informative, entertaining, and useful conversation. And we want to do that with respect. So we need your help on that. And now the question is, are you ready to flex those muscles in your mind? Because, family, if it's 7 on Saturday, it is time for Salim. And y'all know what to do to flex those mind muscles. Just pick up the phone and give me a call at 773-591-1690. And we can get started. This evening, we're going to spend some time discussing today's state of Black Chicago Congress and the ideas behind it. We will, get some discussion going on what it was all about. I tell you, what I'll do is I'll read a little bit of the vision statement to let you know what the intentions of the Congress was, what their intentions were. Okay, here's the statement. The community of African descent in Chicago is at a critical juncture in its history. Currently, people of African descent rank lower on most socioeconomic indicators than other racial and ethnic groups, and violence has become a scourge that threatens to obliterate the hopes and gains of previous generations. Although voting is a hallmark of a well-functioning democracy, the conditions that the community of African descent faces necessitates a bold response that transcends the electoral arena and mobilizes the energies of every segment of the community toward resolving common problems. The mission of the State of Black Chicago Congress is to mobilize an intergenerational group of leaders from all sectors of the community of African descent in order to develop a plan of action that addresses issues such as the inequitable distribution of educational resources and opportunities, joblessness, business development and opportunities, youth engagement and leadership development, health care, new media and technology, crime and violence, politics, and spirituality, religion, and the Black church in the 21st century. The community of African descent in Chicago contains vast resources and most assuredly has a capacity to effectuate change. The greatest limitation facing the community, however, is the reluctance to unify behind a common agenda. This reluctance impacts the whole community, hampering group advancement socially, economically, and politically, and undermines the ability to make collective demands. Now, that's just an excerpt, so you understand kind of the scope of what the event today was all about. So, what do you think? The group wanted to mobilize the Black community to address problems in 9 areas, as I pointed out before: education, access, and the other ones, ending up with religion and the Black church. Do you think these are the most important issues? And if not, what do you think they are? So we're going to get into that a little bit. And what about those tornadoes in Oklahoma? Man, just on May 20th, less than 2 weeks ago, Oklahoma was hit with a massive E5 storm, and just 11 days later, it was hit again. In fact, 7 tornadoes went across the middle of the state, killing 9 people on the road as they hopped in their vehicles trying to escape danger. I just hope that this outbreak of these destructive storms has convinced the folks in Oklahoma to mandate the inclusion of storm cellars whenever they build a school. It should be in all of their homes, but it's certainly a school. And those without storm shelters now should be retrofitted without delay. we see just how destructive these storms are, and perhaps this is a new pattern: more violent storms, a higher, a higher F rating of them, and just deaths all over the place. Things continue to deteriorate in Syria as American neocons and other Republicans continue to urge the president to start arming the rebels in Syria. Meanwhile, you remember that Senator John McCain, that odd guy, went over to Syria in a sneak visit crossing over from Turkey. He visited some members of the Syrian rebels, but it turns out that they were members of a jihadi group that uses kidnapping as a tactic. A picture of McCain with these guys revealed that at least one of them is a member of this group that kidnaps folks. But that's so far has failed to deter him from still, urging an arming of these guys and his warmongering, which is essentially what it is. So we're going to talk about all that and whatever else is on your mind. Give us a call, 773-591-1690, and we're going to go right to the calls right now. Colin, hey, how you doing?
Good morning, evening, Salim. How you doing?
Good evening, my brother. How are you?
Okay, state of Chicago, we're in the crisis, or what they did on Chicago State, I think there has no effect what's going to happen right now. So they can talk, all the talking, but they're not doing no action, speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm. What action do you think they should do?
Well, let's get a economic agenda first and get an education agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we need to create businesses in our community so we can employ our own people. Number two, let's get a hold to our school system. If the public schools are not doing the job, let's create our own schools instead of waiting on the public schools to close 50 schools by September and transferring from students from one neighborhood to another neighborhood.
So you think you think it's feasible? That it's economically feasible for us to have our own school system?
Yes, it is. I think it is. Because if we can spend over $2 billion a year, I think we can create our own schools, our own network, television, radio.
Well, tell me this. Why do you, Colin, why do you think we have yet to do that? Because people have been talking about very similar things for many, many years, at least since 1915, when Marcus Garvey came on the scene.
It's like we're not, in general, like 2 or 3, 4 generations, we're not together on it.
Mm-hmm.
We're still not together.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is?
We're not homogenous. We're not. Everybody want to go their separate ways. So we just want to, as a group, we want.
So how do you think
get on one issue?
How do you think we can deal with that?
Well, like I said, the conference might the day at Chicago State, you might say something, but still, the next day, we're still gonna have the same problems.
No, you're right, man. I don't disagree with you. I'm just wondering if you have an idea of how we can forge that kind of unified mentality, the mentality that would urge us or would compel us to unify and do the kind of economic development that you're talking about.
We can start creating an economic base in Chicago, like I said, that we could pull our money together and let's create our own business and start with that. Like the foreigners coming in.
But Callan, you realize, of course, that you're just saying that. Again, and that's a good idea, but I'm saying many people have had that idea for many, many years, and yet we have yet to do it. Why do you think, or what do you think is necessary to change that pattern that we've been in?
Well, we have to change that pattern. We have to go back to when back in the 90s, let's go back to the turn of the century when we had Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, I'm using that for instance.
Yes, sir.
We had our own businesses. We created everything we had. We had in our own community.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we go back to that basics, I think we can be on the right foot for right now.
All right, my brother.
All right then.
I hear you. I understand what you're saying. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I hear what the brother's saying. But of course, it's a completely different historical context that we're in today than those days of Tulsa. Not only was segregation enforced, and in many ways we had no choice but to participate in each other's business and be patrons of each other's businesses. But it's a different era. Differing historical context necessitates differing strategies, and if only we could import the kind of the context that allowed us to develop Tulsa and Rosewood and countless other independent little black villages and towns across this country, which we did. But it's really because we had no choice but to do that. And the element of unity was racial discrimination. We all were discriminated against rather equally, equal opportunity discrimination. The class divisions were inconsequential because of that unified racial discrimination. And so we had a sense of solidarity that's gone these days. So that necessitates a new method. And I wonder if this Black Chicago Congress, the state of Black Chicago Congress, could be the road to a new method. What do you think? Brother Dwight, hey, man, how are you?
I think we have a choice now, Salim, and we choose that cold white ice and that sweet white sugar and that even sweeter white woman. Just look at that Pepsi commercial. And so we do need to talk to that last brother. We need to talk to organize, how to undo some of these choices that we have chosen and to unify, but I won't dwell there. The manifesto you read sound pretty good to me so far. If we can act on some of those things, it would be to our benefit. Yes, I did visit your unfair city last Saturday.
Oh, did you?
For African Liberation Day.
Oh,
and
okay.
Met a few of your listeners, none of your callers, but
you didn't see Manson, huh?
I would not have known if I saw him.
Okay.
So I don't know, but I still find Chicago a very inspirational place, and to have a very strong African community. It's just the unconscious Africans that's not so strong.
Yes,
but the reason I called, I was listening, I believe, on Wednesday, and I heard somebody, forgive me, brother, I forget who it was, but they were taking Steve to task for his support of what Bernal called the Aryan model.
Yes.
And his rejection of people like Ivan Van Sertima as unacceptable in the level of his scholarship.
Right.
And I suggest probably that if Steve doesn't accept Van Sertima, he wouldn't accept anybody. White supremacy, acceptability to white supremacy is white supremacy. And when you attempt to overthrow that, then you get deemed unacceptable. I forget what the term you were using to describe Steve's reluctance to accept somebody like Van Sertima, but I paraphrase you as he was saying that Van Sertima would be unacceptable.
Yes.
But to help the brother out and whoever else, couple of nice books Van Sertima treated on these books, but Unexpected Faces in Ancient America by Alexander.
Unexpected Faces in Ancient America?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
By Alexander von Wutenow. And let's see, Leo Wiener. I forget the name of his book. It's something like this is it, Africa and the Discovery of America. I'm pretty sure that's it. If not, I'll correct it in a future call.
Okay.
But this coming weekend, look, the evidence is not only in books, and there's many books. For instance, the archaeology of Hamilton County, where it was printed, I believe, in the 50s, where they never expected black people to read the books, and they've got pictures of effigies of African people and the animals from, exact copies of the animals in the Book of the Dead. Lots of evidence that the white supremacists never expected black people to discover. He put that out. But even more telling, Salim, the artifacts are being sold, being bought and sold, being plowed up out of cornfields and wheat fields all over America and making their way into flea markets. I have quite a few items in my house.
Is that right?
I showed one pipe to Van Sertima that was dug up in western Kentucky, and I asked him, where?
When you were saying Hamilton County, you're talking about Ohio, right?
Hamilton County, Ohio, Cincinnati area.
Mm-hmm.
But it's other books, from other areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I showed this pipe to Van Sertima, and he said, he guessed that it's from probably West Africa. No, it's from West Kentucky. But there's an event going on this weekend in a place called Friendship, Indiana. And if you go there, this is going to be next Saturday at 7:30 a.m. It's put on by the National Rifle Association, the National Muzzle Loaders Association. And they have this primitive area where you can't even bring a book of matches. You got to do everything the primitive way. They have this muzzle loader competition going on, and they have this flea market. Well, in the flea market, back in the old days, I haven't been in a while, but back in the old days when I used to go, the feds used to come in and raid them for trading in human, items made from the human body, like cups from skulls or whatever. Wow. But if you go, there will be many Africans with some great African items, traditional African items, old, ancient items. Mm-hmm. But also you'll find a couple of people will have what they call Indian artifacts. And when you look at the faces on these effigies, you'll be shocked to hear that they came from North America. You'll think they came from Africa somewhere. So the place is Friendship, Indiana, but the evidence is just, overwhelming. So, the only thing that Steve has to really base his truth on is just, white supremacy is empire. But the scholarship, no, man, he can't sustain that.
Yes,
Thanks,
sir. All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it, Dwight.
All right.
Yes, sir. I hear Dwight and certainly agree with where he's coming from. But during those days, and unfortunately those days are rapidly receding. Those days when Afrocentricity, African-centered scholarship was in its heyday, when people were talking about Afrocentric schools and alternative schools around the country, Afrocentric curriculum in alternative schools around the country, charter schools that were based on Afrocentric curriculum, those kinds of things, when people were really pushing hard for this kind of alternative scholarship. Those days are receding, but during those days, there was serious dissension with the Afrocentric mindset. John Jackson, Ben Yakinen, Van Sertima, and many others were really pretty much excoriated in the mainstream among mainstream scholars. They excoriated or dismissed these guys as trying to peddle what they would call therapeutic scholarship designed to produce pride in the people who were lacking that pride because of white supremacist scholarship. So they kind of dismissed it as some attempt to use history as therapy, as if calling Western civilization when it manifestly isn't. And when you're talking about European civilization, you're talking about a little sliver of the Eurasian peninsula, and you're calling that European civilization. That if that's not history as therapy, what is? So this battle is a long-standing one, the scholarly battle, and unfortunately, it appears that a lot of black scholars have kind of opted out of it. They're not the same kind of dedicated advocates that there used to be. Molefe Asante, for example, in Temple is having problems, and that's where the first African-centered African American program originated, right in Temple. And of course, Asante is the popularizer of Afrocentricity. So it's a new day, and there's not much help on the scholarly front these days. Let's go to Studious Damon. Hey, my brother, how are you?
Oh, I'm just studying Black history because I don't want it to be no mystery. What about you, Salim?
That's right. It is a mystery to many.
It sure is. That's why we got to keep on studying it.
Yes,
and I'm checking in from Toledo. I'm originally from Cincinnati, but I've been in Toledo for about nearly 5 years.
Okay.
And I wanted to, and hello to the VON fam. Thanks for taking my call, Salim.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to thank you for your kind words when you said I remind you of Steve Coakley, and then you said somebody else, I don't know, FX, and then you said Robert X.
Yes.
For being enthusiastic about doing my own research. This
Absolutely.
was way back in January. But I assure you, and I'm nowhere near the categories of Steve Coakley and Robert X. And I wanted to thank Mon Sung for saying that I'm doing a good thing by recording as many of your shows as I can.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And I wanted to discuss a couple of things. The first thing I wanted to bring up was, do you still think that the term Dwight came up with Barack Bush's juvenile?
Yeah, I mean, yes, sir, I do. I mean, I think all of that name calling is it may be good in certain, for certain purposes, but I don't think it's useful, really. I mean, I think you can make the case against him without calling them names, and what that does, in addition to that, is it provokes the anger of people who have respect for him for symbolic reasons, and there's no need to alienate them.
Yeah, I think you can make a case without name calling, but I do think that, and I'm not big on name calling myself, but I do think that certain names, when you're dealing with politics, they do have meaning. Like when you use the term Republicans, that's making people think about the Republicans and the things that they've done, and also I don't really see the Democrats that far from the Republicans, but I kind of lump them in the same category, even though they do have some differences. But what if you looked in a paper or a magazine and you saw a picture that introduced an article where the left half of the body was President Obama and the right half of the body was former President Bush? Would you say that was juvenile, or would you say this is a way to attract someone to read the article?
Yeah, that's a graphic. That's making a graphic point. There's room for that kind of creative license in presenting a graphic image. I don't find any problem with that, especially since many of the programs that President Obama is instituting harken back to the administration of President Bush. But even further back, it harkens back to Reagan even. So I mean, and even Clinton. There are many aspects of the president's program that resemble some Clintonian touches as well.
Well, the thing that I would definitely agree with what you said was, and I would take it even just a little bit further. It seems to me, when you look back at these presidents, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, they seem to just continue the same thing, white supremacy. And I mean, they'll act like there's some real big differences, but a good amount of the policies seem to overlap one another. But the reason I had brought that up was that in the Black Agenda Report, and I haven't had a chance to read the article thoroughly, but there's an article entitled "The U.S. Press and Repression in the Obama Era: A New Awakening or Political Theater," and it's written by Ajamu Baraka. And the interesting thing about it is that it's got this picture of the left half of the face is Obama, and the right half of the face is former President Bush. Mm-hmm. And I have been thinking about that in my head for a while, even before I noticed this picture. And then when I saw this picture, it just compelled me to ask you then. So that's why I have
Baraka, he's a regular poster on my Facebook page, and we had some very, very interesting discussions. That brother's doing some good stuff. Real serious scholarship, man. He did a piece on Syria and what's going on in that part of the world. Absolutely brilliant piece, man.
Well, when I get a chance, I'm gonna really thoroughly read that article because it looks quite interesting.
But what you were saying, though, I agree, man. And one reason that's why I don't think it's necessary to say Barack Bush, because all presidents really have that same mission, as you pointed out, and white supremacy is part of that mission.
Oh, okay, I do see that, even though I think that Barack Bush makes people think about things. But I mean, there's some juvenile names. You know, if I run out and I call somebody an ugly dump truck head, that's just plain old juvenile, But I think that Barack Bush does have a meaning, and that's what I say this. I distinguish name calling, even though I really don't get too much into it.
Okay, but I'll go for that.
Yeah,
that dumb truck head, that kind of gets me, brother.
But I was wondering, and this is going into a different subject here. I was wondering, when you hear black people talk about the strength of the black family and the black family sticking together with past generations, would you say those stories are often romanticized, sometimes romanticized, rarely romanticized, or never romanticized, or anywhere between those choices? For example, a little between sometimes and often. What would you say?
I would say exactly as you characterize it, between sometimes and often.
Yeah, you know what? And we came up on the same plane here, because I would say somewhere between sometimes and often myself. Because, sometimes I hear adults look at our young people today and they speak of them with heavy criticism concerning things such as children being born out of wedlock, homes that may not have a father, domestic violence, etc. And I get the impression that a number of adults romanticize how black families stuck together in past generations. I'm going to give you a historical look at this just for a second. Okay. I was reading in a middle school textbook, and that middle school textbook is called Creating America, A History of the United States Beginnings Through Reconstruction. And it's written by Jesus Garcia et al. And I'm looking at pages 524 to 525. I actually made copies of this. And it says that just after slavery was so-called abolished in 1865, one of the things I'm talking about black folks, we did was travel hoping to find family members who we had been separated from during slavery, and many of us adopted children of relatives who had passed away and friends in hopes of maintaining strong family ties. Now, what strikes me is that when I read stories concerning the black family, I do not always see us sticking together. For example, I brought that up because that is history according to that particular textbook, and that does contradict my point, but I still wanted to bring that up. But for example, in Malcolm X's autobiography, Malcolm was a child produced in Elder Earl Little's second marriage. He had 3 children already from a previous marriage.
That's right.
And he and his first wife did not stay together for some reason or another. And I want to make this very clear. I'm not ignoring Earl Little's accomplishments. I have the highest amount of respect for him. People have talked about him before. I know Mayfield's talked about him a lot. But the question is, did these black families of past generations really stick together? Because also Malcolm discusses sometimes his father would beat Mother Louise. So here's an example of domestic violence going on.
Yes, sir.
And then there's a book entitled World Leaders Past and Present, Martin Luther King, and this is written by Nancy Schuker, and on page 26, she discusses that the Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. had, begin quote, seen his father strike his mother in frustration after he had unsuccessfully tried to soothe his rages with alcohol, end quote. King Sr. had witnessed his father being humiliated by whites, and his father had seen a black man lynched by whites. So here's another example of domestic violence. And of course, there's always stuff behind it. But, you know, I got several examples. I mean,
yes, sir. I hear you.
Okay.
But I think your greater point is that we tend to overlook that in a effort to romanticize it, to provide us with some kind of inspiration to change our behavior today. And I think,
right.
And I think you're right. I mean, we like, you know, a lot of people talk about our past as a unified group of folks, entrepreneurs and all. But if you read Du Bois's book, Philadelphia Negro, which was written in 1890, you know, we weren't doing all that hot in Philadelphia, even then.
Okay.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So
and I haven't read that. I need I need to read that.
Yes, sir. So I hear what you're saying, my brother, and I appreciate your call.
Well, and the thing I just want to say in closing, Salim, the thing that I'm seeing is that we've had a lot of problems that have snowballed from generation to generation.
Yes.
And I'm not going to say we have not tried to handle those problems, but there's just a lot of things that we have not corrected, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. And I'll leave it there. But thanks for taking my call,
Thank
Salim.
you, brother. Appreciate it. Appreciate the contribution,
all right.
brother. Brother Damon always brings another texture to the conversation, very necessary texture. And one of the things he mentioned is that how we tend to demonize our young people, and that was one of the subjects that came up today at the Congress. I mean, there were some young folks available who were saying exactly that. You know, we talk about the lack of intergenerational unity, and yet we continuously dismiss and delegitimize and even demonize people. You hear about folks talking about put them all in jail. They're endorsing Senator Kirk's absurd, idea of imprisoning 18,000 young black men who happen to be gangster disciples, or who he says could be gangster disciples, and we're endorsing that. One of our most pressing problems is mass incarceration, and yet we have many people in our community urging a more stringent regime of incarceration. So, and in many ways, you can't blame them, because they're besieged by crime in their communities and a lack of security. So, they are, like many of us, are lost in symptoms. And as long as we remain lost in symptoms, we won't be able to make any serious strides toward the black freedom that we desire. Brother Michael, hey, man.
Hey, Salim, how you doing, man?
I'm well. How you doing?
I was just thinking about that meeting that took place at Chicago State today. Mm-hmm. And that's got to be like maybe the 1 trillionth meeting we've had. About that. Yeah, and I suspect that we'll get the same results that we got out the first 999 billion. I see no reason to. I see the same people there, and I see no reason to think that anything different will come out of it when you got the same people who still stuck in 1950 somewhere. And besides that, they're scared of their own shadows, and they're not going to do anything that they think might irritate Caucasians. And unity among black folks would certainly irritate Caucasians. So I don't even think it was a serious thing. I think it's just something to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, the people there are people who are basically people who can't be trusted. And speaking of trust, I think it was like 2 weeks ago that John from Detroit was mentioning that, you know, that he wouldn't trust Louis Farrakhan. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you had a couple of callers that called in to berate him because he said he didn't trust him. But I think that given his history, as it relates to, say, Khalid Muhammad, Steve Coakley, this new thing with Scientology, I think that he is someone that I wouldn't trust as far as I could smell.
Okay.
And, we've gotten much out of him in the area of rhetoric, but in terms of a documented plan of action, and I ain't talking about that little 10-point garbage that they put in the paper, that ain't no plan. That's just rhetoric.
But tell me this, Michael, do you think the organization itself serves any positive purpose? The Nation of Islam, and the fact that it attracts young people who may be going in another direction were it not for them, or the fact that he provides a sense of unity for people who want to adhere to those strictures of the Nation of Islam. You don't think there's any value in that?
To be perfectly honest, Salim, I see no difference between the Nation of Islam and these Negro churches and nothing more than what I would identify as it's nothing more than a high polluting street gang as far as I'm concerned.
But it is highfalutin though, right?
Yeah, it's a high polluting street gang. I see young people, that they have a revolving door over there, Salim, and when you walk past Mount Merriam, you can feel the breeze because they come out just as fast as they go in because there's nothing there. But if you can't provide people with sustenance, if you can't provide them with options and opportunities, the young people, they don't want to hear it, and they're not staying. But most of the people I see out there selling pies and stuff, they look like they just about as old as me.
Well, one of the things about the Nation, man, and that you mentioned is that it does seem to attract young people in ways that other black organizations don't attract them.
I would argue that, but the issue is keeping them there and providing them with options that they can then turn into something that can help other people as well.
Well, that's true, but that is true. But in many ways, the Nation does. It has small scale industry, and it provides some seed money for cats who seem to be vigorous and trepreneurial enough to make it work. So in some sense that is correct. But also the Nation reforms a lot of guys' behavior, man. The people who were doing nothing but negative activities in the community. The Nation gives them another way of acting. It provides them with some alternative ways of dealing with their realities, and that's a positive thing, I would think. Wouldn't you say?
No, I wouldn't argue that at all, Salim. The only thing I'm saying is that we don't need to give it more credit than it's due.
Okay.
There's so many people out here that aren't interested because of the nonsense that goes on in there.
Yes, sir. All right, brother. I hear you, Michael.
Have a good one.
You too. I hear what Michael's saying, and that there's some reason for that. There's some legitimacy for his complaint. I'm sure that a lot of followers of the minister would beg to differ very strongly, but you can't deny Michael his insights. I spoke a little bit. I was there at the Congress today, and one of the points that I made was that in my many years of engagement in the movement on the outside, on the inside, as a monitor, as an observer, as a journalist, I've been to, Mike said, trillions of meetings like that. I've been to at least 100 of similar kinds of gatherings. And as he points out, after initial bursts of enthusiasm and perhaps some minor follow-up, things tend to fade away, and stasis envelops the movement once again, a static kind of immobility, and that is a problem. And I think that this Congress is attempting to deal with that by having regularly scheduled follow-up meetings to ensure that that the effort stays alive and that issues are framed through the perspective of the Black Chicago Congress. So good comments, but I think a lot of people are trying to stave off that kind of negative reaction that tends to set in after a while. Let's go to Steve. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hey, how you doing this evening, Salim?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm I'm doing all right. Two things. First thing, about Mr. Farrakhan. I mean, despite what people may think of him, he provides. You can't undoubtedly don't doubt the information that he gives. I mean, he's giving information and breaking down things that's going on that no other blacks would dare to say. Mm-hmm. You know. So, regardless of what other people may think, his information is valuable if you don't get nothing else from him, you know.
Okay.
At least that's what I've learned from him, you know.
Yes, sir.
And not hearing nobody else dare to say these things in public, and you know, I can't disrespect the man.
So his model inspires you to be more aggressive and assertive.
Conscious.
Okay.
Right, and breaking down how this system is ran in this country, not just here but overseas. You know, so you know, people may criticize him, but you cannot deny the information that he's giving you, because 9 times out of 10 the information that he's giving you is basically things that's being done to you or especially blacks. Let me just say that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think he was invaluable when it came to analyzing what's going on in Libya and how Colonel Gaddafi was being treated. As you point out, internationally, he provides international information that is hard to find, especially in the black community.
Exactly. And another thing, Salim, why isn't any, well, I can understand probably why no the media is how all these countries are stepping away from the dollar as using the dollar as the world's currency. And I heard that South Africa is on the verge of doing the same thing, and India, United States,
all the BRICS,
India,
all the BRICS countries,
right?
Man. They're considering an alternative currency,
right? Because they starting to use, you know, like they manufacturing and everything to really back their money versus using the U.S. because really the U.S. is just really steady banking on this military aggressiveness for people to keep using the money as, you know, and other countries are moving towards trading off with their own money and also using their industries, whatever, to back their money. And I want to know, as they do this and they phase out the dollar, what eventually is going to happen over here, how that would affect us over here as far as what we buy here and value of products.
It will certainly devalue the worth of the dollar, and that would cause we would lose economic predominance because of that, and some of the perks that go along with that dominance would also begin to fritter away. We would begin to pay prices that are more commensurate with the value of the commodities. For example, we would pay more for oil. We would pay more for a lot of manufactured goods. Walmart, for example, to sell its items so cheaply and pay its employees so poorly, and much of that would change, and we would suffer serious trauma if that were to happen. And that's why and you point out quite correctly that the globalism that we're practicing now is a globalism with combat boots.
Exactly, because they were saying how China it basically then took over. It has become the world's number one in trading partner, and has outbeat the U.S. And that, you know, China and Japan has agreed to do trading and not using, and even including Russia has decided not to use the U.S. Dollar as part of they intermediate trade. So I see that a lot of countries are coming together and saying, hey, you know, because they're tired of this aggression with the United States, and really technically the only thing the United States really do have is the military, basically keeping the dollar afloat, you know, because
that's right.
And everything else is you know, and I'm just saying why people not paying attention to this, but that's assuming it's going to hit
But you can't predict it completely, Steve, because there are other industries developing in this country right now. For example, the fracking industry, even as controversial as it is producing energy at rapid rates, and other new technology may re-emerge this country. This country may re-emerge on the international scene with more economic heft if some of these industries are ever perfected. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate the call.
All right.
Brother Steve. Okay, let's, we got another Steve here. Hey, Steve.
Yes, hello, Salim.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Yes, I wanted to make a couple of points. I wanted to address an original point that you made with regard to the very different environment in which all groups find themselves, African Americans included, in terms of asserting one's economic autonomy in a world, as you just alluded to, that is made up of Walmarts and Costco's and so forth, wherein even Main Street white America is finding itself on the decline, not being able to compete. So the question is, like exactly as you pointed out to one of the callers, what are the specifics? How do you get someone to agree to, in effect, pay more for that roll of paper towels and Windex and baby food, because Walmart can afford to buy it in bulk and pay far less, and therefore sell it for less. So these are the specifics, and I'm glad that you were able to realize that it's not just as simple as saying, well, we want economic autonomy, which is, again, it's great rhetoric, but there are real obstacles that didn't exist 50 years ago. And I think it made some good points. And with regard to this ongoing debate about, Afrocentric scholarship versus mainstream scholarship, I have constantly challenged people to tell me exactly who has provided the oppositional research to that which they are citing. So if you like Van Sertima, then tell me 5 other scholars who refute Van Sertima, tell me about their methodology, tell me about their peer review, and begin by telling me about your qualifications, training, background, and credentials in assessing these things. Because I guarantee if I were to ask many of the people who argue for some of these ideas, what's the difference between a dependent and independent variable? What's standard deviation? How do you operationalize a definition?
But you know what they would say to you, Steve, right?
I'm sure it would be something creative.
They would say you're using white supremacist methodology,
exactly.
constructed by,
Yes, and it's equivalent. So in other words, as I said before, it's like stretching the umbrella to include so much, that stretching it so thin such that anything can permeate that surface. And it's like saying, I have never learned to add, multiply, subtract, or divide, but I'm about to tell you who is right and who is wrong in terms of one mathematical equation versus another one. I mean, how do you make that assessment since you haven't had any formal training in the field? And again, no one ever talks about the other side, including all of these scholars that have again produced a lot of great work that challenges directly. And again, for instance, there's scholarship with regard to the
You're not talking about Mary Lefkowitz, are you?
No. Her book, I think, was problematic. I think it had made some good points. It was off based on a great many issues. Yes. But I mean, there's people like Clarence Walker, Guy Pearce, Stephen Howe, and there's a great many people. I mean, and I'll make a point of it with regard to science, which actually is something that would something that white, say, supremacists would grasp onto, and that's this question of who came first to the Americas. And there's a small body of scholars.
Steve, I gotta go, man. Okay. I appreciate your contribution, and we'll talk again. Steve making good points. We will be back right after this. 809. Salim MuWakkil here on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. And we are going to go right to the phones and right to Brother Maceo. Hey, my brother.
Hey, Salim.
I saw you today, man.
I saw you. I was wondering. I was trying to see if I could make eye contact with you. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a question, but just unfortunately, they said that we couldn't answer any more questions. But I did get a question in. I had a written question read by Cliff. But if I may, before I get to that, and offer my solutions to that, and just give a little brief insight about that, may I say something else first? Sure. Okay. First of all, let me say hello to the WVON listeners, your listeners, Albert Woods and Roxanne and Mansong. you just got off the phone with Steve, and Steve, if I'm not mistaken, he agreed with you when you talked about Mary Lefkowitz being kind of off kilter.
Yes.
Now, a few years ago, and I'm sure that Studious Damon has this on his tapes, when you asked, we were on this same debate about Afrocentric scholars, and then Steve talking about the scholarly community, and I was talking about Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, and you asked Steve, you said, well, who are some of the scholars that you support? He said, Mary Lefkowitz, Steve. That's what you said.
I think I remember that. Yes, sir.
That's what you said. So if you're going against her, then what type of confusion are you trying to present here? You know, you on one hand you are supporting the scholarly community, and you cite Mary Lefkowitz as one of your main scholars. And then you get on the phone today and you say that she is not so accurate, or however, she is not really really solid. So what is that saying about you, Steve?
Well, I think he's adopted some other scholars who are questioning Afrocentric scholarship.
Okay, but I'm not going to stay on that subject long, but I just wanted to say what White mentioned, Professor Leo Weiner, a white scholar. He's not Afrocentric, Steve. Another scholar, Harold G. Lawrence, in the African Explorers of the New World. He's not an Afrocentric scholar, Steve. Also, Colonel Alexander Bagheim, The Shadow of Atlantis. He's not white either. And then you have Robert Silverberg, who talked about the mound builders of ancient America, where he talked about there being a civilization here in America, not just in the Mexico region in terms of the Olmecs, but in Ohio. And he called them the mound builders, and they had contact with one another. There was a Hopewell community in Ohio. There was a Crystal River community of Africans in Florida, and they all were in contact with one another. So, but anyway, I just wanted to share that, and then I wanted to say, before I get to my question to you, Salim, there are 3 birthdays coming up. On Monday, the great Memphis Minnie, tremendous blues artist. Not only did she sing, but she played the guitar, she composed, and she was born on June 3rd, 1897 in Algiers, Louisiana. And then you have none other than the great Curtis Lee Mayfield, born right here in Chicago on June 3rd, 1942. Just, how can you say, a musician, singer, record label owner, just a producer. He did everything. And then lastly, well, I won't talk about Tony Jackson until Wednesday, but Tony Jackson's birthday is coming up. But in reference to the state of the black
Chicago Congress
today, I thought it was great. But however, as Michael said, there has to be, and you said this too, there has to be follow-up.
Yes.
It can't just be forums with just talk and nice things exchanged. It has to be follow-up.
Yes, sir.
And
you know, let me say also that I appreciate Clerk Brown's attempt to pull all this together, and the help that she had was outstanding.
Oh yes, absolutely,
no
absolutely.
doubt. But I mean, this 1 minute thing was pretty. See what that does is it encourages people to be flamboyant rhetorically. Because you have to try to attract the crowd, you have to try to excite the crowd with a minimum of rhetoric. So you have to be more colorful than you would normally have to be, and sometimes you have to evade nuances, and all of those things are what really makes these kinds of conferences meaningful. Is that they go beyond or beneath the surface, or they add other textures to our understanding, and so that 1 minute thing was a bit troublesome for me.
But you know, I agree with your point and some of the panelists' points in terms of incorporating young people. And there were some young people on some of the panels, which was really a great thing. And they spoke very eloquently, and they had a lot to say.
Yes.
My contention in terms of a solution would be back in the 60s, around 1968, 67, 68, 69, the church community here in Chicago sponsored, both the West Side and the South Side sponsored baseball leagues, basketball leagues for our youth, not for pony leagues, but little leaguers and pony leaguers. In addition to that, they also provided jobs. And I am a testament to that because I played on a baseball team with for Bethel AME called the Mohawks. And in addition to playing the baseball, and I thank them for that opportunity, they also provided a social center. And these were a lot of different churches on the South Side and the West Side. And they provided social centers for the young children. And it was a very successful program. And now my question is how come that can't be done today?
Yes, sir. I remember that question at the thing today. I mean, that I guess that was your question that Cliff read.
No, my question was regarding. It was regarding not Dr. Dean, Leslie Fenwick, when she mentioned about this school closings being based upon land grabs.
Oh, yes, right. Okay, I thought I recognized that question because you had asked, we talked about that previously, as a matter of fact.
Wednesday, absolutely.
But you asked a question about the churches as well, but you asked
I did.
in person,
you're right. You're right, I did. That was the second half of it. You're right.
Yes,
you're
sir.
right.
I mean, that's true. I mean, a lot of organizations, like, for example, I played on a basketball team in Jersey called the Urbans, and it was sponsored by the Urban League in North New Jersey, in Linden, New Jersey, actually. And churches were involved in various kinds of athletic teams as well. Yes, I think it was there was a tradition of that in our community, man, and that tradition is just one of many that has frittered away. I don't know how to regain that kind of commitment, but I think you're right. We need to work on that in a way that may be able to convince these institutions to re-involve themselves.
And that wasn't that far ago. That wasn't that long ago.
No,
1968, 1969, and a lot of these churches today have the wherewithal to do that. But they can do it, and it was a very, very successful program, and that's the thing about it. And it could be successful today. And there's in closing, in reference to the school situation in terms of the crime, the impoverishment in our communities, our elected officials need to be on board. They need to be in one accord. And if they can work in one accord and work on behalf of our people instead of some of them on behalf of themselves, they can get a lot accomplished.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay, thank you, Salim.
Good points, man.
Can you play something by maybe Keep On Pushing or We're a Winner?
Yeah, okay, man. Thank you, Maceo.
Okay, thank you, Salim.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.
Brother Maceo. Let's go to Simbini. Yes, sir. Hey, my brother.
Salim MuWakkil.
Yes, indeed.
This brother was born on January 31st, 1936. He just went to sleep a couple of days ago. And I said this to you over the years. He just simply to me, he's the world's greatest lead baritone. I've got a DVD of baritones being asked who they listened to and who they admired and who influenced them. I'm going to go down the list real quick. Luther Vandross, Paul Williams of the Temptations, Theodore Pendergrass, Eddie Levert, Jaheim, L.J. Reynolds of the Dramatics, William Weegee Howard of the Dramatics, Joe Lagan, Mighty Clouds of Joy, Jerry Butler Impressions, David Clayton, Thomas Blood, Sweat and Tears, Chuck D, Public Enemy, Bill Medley, Righteous Brothers, Levi Stubbs, Four Tops.
I like your ecumenicalism, brother. Very good.
When I heard about it, Salim, and I don't have those responses that I've been getting from people. You know, he was old. We all got to go sometimes. Outside of my mother, he's one of the brothers that I never thought would check out, man. So call me an idiot. I never thought the brother Marvin Jr. would check out.
Marvin Sapp?
No, Marvin Jr.
Oh, Marvin Jr. Okay, yes, sir.
Shame on you. Mighty, mighty, mighty Dales. I give them 3 mighties.
Yeah.
I think one example that can be taken from them is that the members came from different religious backgrounds. And from 1952, they had one personnel change when Johnny Carter came from the Flamingos to them in 1960, taking the spot of Johnny Funches, who was one of the co-writers on Oh What a Night. Mm-hmm. They stayed together that long, despite Chuck being a Muslim and one Seventh-day Adventist and Jehovah's Witness. And, you know, I take a lesson from them. That's why I consider them the preeminent group of all time, the only group that I would put with them out of 5 men from Detroit, the Temptations. So if you listen to him, he'll be back. Those are the Dales behind the Players. Hello Stranger, Barbara Lewis, those are the Dales behind her. Mm-hmm. Where Are You, Dinah Washington, those are the Dales behind her. There'll Come a Time, Betty Everett, those are the Dales behind her. Mm-hmm. I remember a show, I went to see this show, and the Dales
mean Dinah Washington's Where Are You, that was the Dales behind her?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They opened for her. In fact, they used to open for Ray Charles, and they came to work one day, and Ray Charles fired him. He told them, you know, you don't outdo, I'm the star, you don't outdo the star. And he fired them. And according to Herbert Rogers Kent, in the 60s, there were 3 groups nobody wanted to come on behind: Dales, OJs, and the Temptations. Now, I went to a show, the first concert I've ever gone to, and the Dales opened for the Isley Brothers. Man, it took the Isley Brothers 30 minutes to get the headline over the Dales. I don't know who thought that up, but it took the Isley Brothers 30 minutes to get the audience back from the Dales. And
well, the Isley Brothers are pretty bad, brother.
The Isley Brothers are rough now, but I'm talking about vocals now.
Yes,
vocals, who you gonna put with Marvin and the Isley Brothers? Ronald, it was Ronald and the guitar player, except when they were doo-wopping.
Well, they were pretty nice doo-woppers too, you know, the Isley. A lot of people don't remember the Isleys as in their doo-wop phase.
I do. Okay. You're right.
Yes, sir.
And a person who just got off the phone, I remember when the vocal group Black Elegance, the group I founded in 76, when we did the Temptations in 2010, the Dales came up at the discussion at Munchie's on 35th and King Drive, and Sister Kua Najeri was there. Mm-hmm. And one brother who just got off the phone, whose favorite group, according to him, is the Temptations, he said, but all of the Dales couldn't sing. I don't know where the brother got that from. Because if he knew about the Dales' background, and if he looked at the 5 Heartbeats, which I'm sure he did, that not only all of them could take the mic and sing, and they also started out doing choreography, but they were getting ripped off. So they sat down and they decided that it would just be 2 singers, and the others would be deal with the business, deal with the promotion, and things like that, so they wouldn't continually get ripped off. The last thing I'm going to say about these brothers, and of course Clarence Burke of the 5 Stair-Steps went to sleep. So Marvin Jr. is the 42nd singer since Michael Jackson in 2009 that has transitioned. And the reason why I go see these brothers and I give them their props, and the sisters, is because when people say history, I know this is music, and some people for some reason don't consider that too important, but it is a part of the history also. And when I found out that, I didn't hear this, but I was told that Rush Limbaugh announced it the day it happened, Marvin Jr. And that fits because he announced Whitney Houston and Teddy Pendergrass and Al Wilson. I was also told that Chuck D tweeted when Marvin passed. So now I know he passed, but he and the group, and even the Temps, these brothers and sisters never really got, I don't care if they won Grammys and whatnot like the Temps, they never really got their credit. And I'm going to give them their credit, and that's why I'm working hard to pull off this Dales Meet the OJs, because yours truly is doing Marvin Jr.'s part, and I got some heavy tracks to fill.
Yes, indeed.
Rest, brother, rest, Marvin Jr.
All right, my brother.
All right.
Yes, sir. Indeed. The Dells are immortalized in really just one song, "Stay in My Corner." But Brother Sabini knows their entire discography, so he's the man to talk to if you want some information on the Dells. Let's go back to the phones, Brother Shelby. Hey, man, how are you, sir?
Hey, Brother Salim, I'm doing great tonight. Hey, thank you for your show, and you've had some great callers.
Yes, sir.
I do want to tell a few things, if I may. I tried to call in earlier, and I really, really appreciate your show.
Thank you.
Because, and I'll tell you why I appreciate it, Brother Salim. Because as Amos Wilson, he writes about the term historiography.
Yes, sir.
And for those that may not be familiar with that term, it's the writing of history.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened, Brother Salim, man, you know this better than me. We as African people were written completely out of history.
We were indeed.
And so about 20 years ago, when my mother brought me to one of Steve Coakley's lectures in New Orleans, and we paid like $5 to get in. And this brother, he stood up so long his knees were hurt, man. And listen, he spoke so much his throat was swollen, and he couldn't. And he said that till 3, 4 in the morning, man.
Wow.
And ever since then, every book that I could get my hands on, I got simply he would come in with suitcases full of books.
That's how Steve rolled, man.
Listen, and laid them out on the floor, and for $5. And and he and I called your show a few years, probably 1 or 2 years before he died. We were on a 3-way, man. He called twice, if you remember.
Yes, I do remember.
Your show twice.
Uh-huh.
And Brother Dwight can remember that I was one of Steve Coakley's that would duplicate all of his lectures and send it to thousands of people throughout the country, man.
Okay.
Because what happens, Brother Salim, is we were stripped of all of the valuable info. We were stripped. Like you put it, we were stripped of our cultural capital.
Yes, sir.
And people want us to compete with people who have their cultural capital intact when we were stripped of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So your show, and I mean, I really appreciate Brother Michael Jihad, man, because he's like Steve, one no-nonsense type of brother that really wants the best for his people, man.
Yeah,
and Brother Salim, I can tell you, man, I sacrificed probably about $100,000 over the past years just trying to get information and learn the truth about ourselves. I mean, when I call in your show and give information, man, I give the book, I give the page number, I give the author, and what all of what Dr. Ben did, Dr. Clark, John Jackson, all of these people that I consider gods, I really do. Mm-hmm. They sacrifice, and you know how John Jackson died, right? In a nursing home. And I got a book that a brother interviewed him, and he said that if he had to do it again, he wouldn't.
I know, man. I wrote a piece on him, and that was the very point. I interviewed him and did a piece on John when he came to Chicago, because he was my instructor at Rutgers. I had him.
Man, you are blessed, man. You are blessed, and he was very bitter at the end, but
bitter.
But Brother Salim, one of the things that I'm going to sacrifice and keep, even if I just influence one people, that we need to know the true history about ourselves. You remember Marcus Garvey said, what black people did, black people can do. Mm-hmm. But if they're rewriting us out of history and they're showing that we never did anything, then are you familiar with the Marcus Garvey School in Los Angeles?
I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it.
That's where Brother Steve lives with Dr. Anyon Palmer at the Marcus Garvey School.
I didn't know he lived at the school.
Yeah, he lived with Dr. Anyon Palmer, and Dr. Anyon Palmer is the person that created the Marcus Garvey.
Okay, all right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the point that I'm making. So,
yes, sir.
I don't even. There's no amount of evidence that can refute what Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and I'm very familiar with Dwight mentioned Leah Wayner's book, Africa and the Discovery of America. I have that 3-volume book. And he also mentioned Unexpected Faces of Alexander Van Wouterno. I have that book also.
Yes, sir.
And but Brother Salim, the last point is I really wanted to convince myself.
Well, Unexpected Phases in ancient. What's the last word? Unexpected Phases in ancient.
In ancient America.
Ancient America, right? Okay.
By Alexander Van Wouterno.
Okay.
And he was a German.
Right.
And he left Germany and he wound up in Veracruz at Central America. And there's a video that Dr. Ivan Van Sertima went and visited him. Mm-hmm. And he speaks on the video and show all of these faces and all of the terracottas and everything like that. And there's living proof. You know the Olmec head that I mentioned on your last show with the 7 brains. You know when that statue was found? I mean, you know when it was written? I mean, when it was sculptured? 1100 BC, Brother Salim.
Whoa. They carbon dated it?
Yes. If you look at 1492 Columbus, that's 2,500 years before Columbus.
That's right.
I mean, we really, but I do appreciate your show, man. Hey, man, can you know if Sister Soldier's still around? Can you get Sister Soldier on your show, man?
She's still around, yes, sir.
Oh, that's a bad sister, man. That's a bad sister, man.
Yeah. Yes. Go ahead.
Can I make one last point?
Yes, sir.
You know, when Minister Farrakhan was talking about his prostate cancer,
yes,
and how he was cured of his prostate cancer, he never told us. He always thanked God. But you know, my mother every year goes to Eden, Arizona. Are you familiar with Dr. Paul Goss out of Eden, Arizona?
I've heard of him. Yes, I have.
You know, that's where Minister Farrakhan went to deal with his prostate cancer. Are you aware of that?
Well, I know that was one of the consultants. That was one of the places he consulted. But with some other folks with the seeding, with that new seeding process. That's what really saved his life. Yeah.
And did he tell people about specifically what went on? Because I'm interested in getting our people the correct information, Brother Salim. Okay.
No, I think he did. I think he did mention the procedure that he went through. Yes, sir.
Well, thanks a lot, and I appreciate your time, man. Have a nice evening in Hotep, man.
You're quite welcome, Brother Shelby Hotep. Brother Shelby, always informative calls from that brother. Let's go to Sadiki. Hey, Sadiki. How are you, brother?
Brother Salim, how are you?
I'm well, man. Well.
Good. I'm doing fine, sir.
Good.
Let me just say this one to move away from the intellectual realm a little bit and just talk about, I heard a couple of callers talk about Mr. Farrakhan and the nation, and then another caller about the family and the romanticism of the black family.
Yes, sir.
And let me just say that for me, it's somewhat disturbing when I hear information that comes out that has a negative connotation to it. Look, I'm not a member of the Nation of Islam. I know it's not anywhere near perfect, but in terms of the example that it presents, I mean, how do you say that a black man, vis-a-vis Minister Farrakhan, that he just spits out rhetoric? Rhetoric wouldn't bring 2 million black men to D.C. And then you look at the fact that, with the farms and, like you said, the brothers who come up from incarceration and are turned around and the advocacy for strong families. I mean, we need to be accentuating the positive out here that's going on rather than the negative. And, I don't hear them, and this kind of gets into the realm of what you talked about before, Salim, about the name-calling of the president. I refer to him as President Obama, not to be name-calling, but to try to give some awareness to black folk who have this blind reverence for President Obama just based on the fact of the color of his skin. And, I believe he's a brother that, is really struggling with his black identity and has a problem, trying to reach out to us. So, in the one hand, you've got someone criticizing Minister Farrakhan, but then at the same time, you've got folks who are turning a blind eye to a black man who's in the seat of president, who I think has been a huge disappointment, and yet we talk about, well, he's the president, and let's be proud of that. And so I'm just saying that we need to move away from the negatives. When you talk about the family piece, I heard the brother talking about how we romanticize the black family. And I'm saying to myself, what are you talking about? I said, when we came out of, when our ancestors came out of slavery, I know you know this, Brother Salim, our family infrastructure was totally destroyed. And yet our ancestors rebuilt that infrastructure, and in the 1950s, 95% of our homes were two-parent. Now, they weren't perfect, and, you know, I'm a grandfather, but I remember my grandfather, he was like the strength of the household. Mm-hmm. And in spite of it, I didn't even know that he was a closet alcoholic. You know what I mean? But he sat at the head of the table for dinner, and we listened to him with reverence, and he was a postman. And, you know, we know there were other things that were going on, but to come out and make it appear like we're just romantic, I don't know what the brother's experience was. I do know that we dropped the ball in terms of the whole thing around family. And I believe it began, you know, with our struggle in the 70s, when we started saying, well, it's okay to get high, and we accepted integration, and supposedly thought we was going to be assimilated. So I'm just saying that, you know, I just wanted to get back and say, you know what? Let's talk about the positive things that we do and build on that, and stop getting into the negative, because of the fact, from my perspective, it's really annoying. It's really annoying.
Well, see, you know, let me say a few things here. The brother who was talking negatively, or at least not admiringly, of Minister Louis Farrakhan, would not speak admiringly of the president as well. He would be just as scathing, or even more so. He would be more scathing on President Obama than he was on Louis Farrakhan. But the brother who made that statement is pretty. He's reliably negative on a lot of folks. He's kind of the skull of the program. I mean, if you don't measure up in the way that he thinks you should, he will come down on you, this brother. And he comes down. In fact, I don't think I've ever heard Brother Michael say positive things about folks. I suppose once or twice, but he can be relied upon to say negative things. But he also brings up some good points. I mean, there are a lot of people who criticize Minister Farrakhan for various reasons, and they have their right to make that critique. And in terms of the romanticism thing, I think what Brother Damon was talking about is that sometimes when we compare ourselves to the past, we're a little bit too hard on ourselves, not realizing that we've had those problems for a long time, and those problems are not simply recently generated. They are of long duration. And as I pointed out, you know, Du Bois in his book in the Philadelphia Negro, he points to a lot of families that we were having as we were making our transition from rural America to urban America. And you know, I just think that's, you know, we have to consider all of that.
Oh, and I agree with that, but, you know, I don't know, you know, your age, Brother Salim, you know, I'm a grandfather.
I'm a grandfather as well.
And you know, and what I tell people, I said, look, everything's transitional. But I had a discussion with a brother that I grew up with the other day, and we were talking about, we didn't have all this technology, all these toys, anything that we used to have to do our chores, and then our parents would say, my mother would say, all right, go outside and play, and come back for lunch. We would go out, didn't have anything. We'd go out there and build our little toys, and we talked, you know, look, there was racism and white supremacy, but there was a certain innocence to the lifestyle then, in terms of the purity, in terms of the neighborhoods and the relating and how we supported each other. So I know it wasn't nearly perfect, but it was nowhere near the chaos that we have right now. What I'm saying is that there should be progress going on rather than regress, coming out of slavery. And okay, so things weren't perfect in terms of what was going on, say, during the era when I was a young man, but there was a certain amount of strength and integrity there that we were supposed to build on, so that we wouldn't be at the level where we are right now. For me, I keep saying to myself, I can't believe what I'm seeing, what's going on with our families, and I'm saying that we need to accept the fact that, you know, that in many respects, in spite of all the things that have gone on in the past, that we've dropped the ball because we haven't built upon the foundation that was established for us, that wasn't perfect, but it was a foundation that we should have been building on and moving, and not being where we're at right now. We're regressing, and something's wrong with us, and we need to accept that.
Well, but my brother, I can't disagree with that. I hear what you're saying. Thank you, man.
I appreciate the time.
I appreciate the call. Thank you, Sadiqi. Brother Sadiqi from Boston. Let's go to Brother James. Hey, man.
Yes, hello.
This is John. Okay, hey, John, how you doing?
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Brother Zambini, you sound like I was just do some blue magic the other day. What's come over me, man? Like you could fill in for blue magic there.
Zambini got a nice voice. Yeah, he got a nice voice.
Yes, sir. Nobody's critical. Look, I believe that we're all intelligent people. Mm-hmm. And one of the pitfalls we've had as a people is that we have not used scientific data in analyzing our leadership. The numbers don't add up, Salim.
You think scientific data is sufficient to assess in a thorough way, or are there other criteria?
No. First, look, people, you know how the Muslims like to say mathematics is Islam is mathematics, all that stuff. Listen, Salim, the numbers don't add up. Okay, the numbers don't. We got leaders whose lifestyle don't fit the organization that they lead. Every dime has got to be going to take care of their lifestyle. You know, every dime, every nickel, they're operating in debt. They can't go nowhere. You know, it's ridiculous. I can't put no faith in that. And when you ask to see the numbers, and when you ask to see what's coming in and what's going out and all that, hey, people get angry with you. So what I can't do, I can't live, I can't swim with that. You're not gonna put me in no quicksand. Okay? You're not gonna do that to me.
So you're saying, are you saying that the nation is unaccountable when it comes to that?
Yes, and let me give you a quick history, very quick.
Okay.
On Mosque number 1 here in Detroit.
In Detroit, okay.
Yes, everybody. First of all, the current Mosque number 1, the minister, Louis Farrakhan Mosque number 1, is a hut. We don't want to talk about that. Okay, I'm talking about Mosque number 1 under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Okay.
Okay, and the history is telling. History is, we don't have enough historians out there. Everybody talk about Malcolm. Nobody talks about Filbert and Wilford.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, man, Malcolm's brothers were bad.
Yeah, you know what? That's one of the. Have you read Marable's book, man? Reinvention.
Yes, I read it, and I don't think he gave. Look, man, Filbert and Wilford deserve a book on their own.
Okay. Maybe you could write that.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, they ran Detroit, they ran Michigan, and the Nation of Islam in the 1950s and 60s were kicking on all cylinders.
Yes, sir.
Mosque number 1, and they're the one that converted Malcolm. His brothers did, and his brothers were tight.
That's right. That's you know, Marable makes that point as well, you know?
Yes, and he's correct there.
Yes.
They operated out of a mosque in what's called Black Bottom in the 1940s and the early 50s, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The rise of the Nation of Islam coincides with the exodus of the Jewish community out of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews in the 1950s...
Incidentally, John, did you see that documentary, Detropia? That was on PBS last week.
No, I haven't seen that. Where can I get to see that?
It's still up. You can go to the PBS website and look for Independent Lens. It's still up. It'll be up to June 16th, I think.
Okay, I will definitely do that and look at it. Let me just very quick. I'll be very quick here.
Okay.
There was a young Jewish retail guy who went to a place 9 Mile called Southfield, which was a wilderness, and said, I'm going to build the first indoor shopping mall. And he did in the 1950s, called Northland. And he convinced the Jews in Detroit to leave off of 12th Street and move out to Southfield. And they did. And when they moved out of Southfield, they sold their synagogue on Linwood and 12th. The synagogue was sold to the Nation of Islam. Mosque number 1. It became Mosque number 1, a Jewish synagogue.
Okay.
That was ran by Wilford X. From that mosque, they ran the entire state. When they left Black Bottom in Detroit, the Nation of Islam did. They didn't look back. They became a middle-class organization. They began to buy homes in the former Jewish neighborhood on 12th and Davidson and Dexter. They began to rise. They adopted a middle-class ethic. Okay? They were not, they left that poor stuff behind. They had businesses. They had massive operations. And they really shunned black revolutionary.
Yes.
You had Mosque number 1 on Linwood and 12th. Right across the street, you had a Baptist church that was headed by Aretha Franklin's father.
Okay.
You had Muhammad on one side, you had Reverend C.L. Franklin on the other. You had the new republic, the Republic of New Africa, man, in the early 70s, when they got into a beef with the police and they wanted to seek refuge. Did they go to Mosque number 1? Or did they go to Reverend C.L. Franklin's church?
Where'd they go?
They went to Reverend C.L. Franklin's church.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Not that it was, I'm not criticizing it was negative, but the Nation of Islam, they were business-minded people, man.
Oh, even when Malcolm rose, man, there was a lot of animosity because Malcolm used to bring in African dancers and whatnot at the bazaars, in the nation's bazaars in New York. There were a lot of officials in the nation who disliked that intensely. He got a lot of pressure from Chicago to stop bringing African cultural, celebrities and whatnot to the nation's bazaars.
Yes, and my point is simply, the nation was bean counters, man. They counted that money, Navy bean counters, I guess, and they made sure that they were solvent, that things ran smoothly. They abided by the law. They were not, into the, all out into the real strong black dancers, even though they said they espoused separation. But in their actions, and here in Flint, in Detroit, in Muskegon, in Saginaw, all over Michigan, okay, Lansing, outside of Chicago, they had the second largest number of Muslims. We're here in Michigan. And even to this day, that spirit, particularly when a minister comes to town, is revived.
Yes, sir.
It's revived. But look, it's a long story. But let me just say, the minister is good people. I wish he would say, what his medical bills are. That way we'll know, with prostate cancer, the typical brother is not getting seed implants. It's too expensive. He's not getting that. The typical brother is not getting no pelvic exoneration. That's not going to happen. Okay? So we need to be real and be honest about fighting prostate cancer. Okay? The minister had resources that the typical that my father-in-law didn't have.
Yes,
Just plain and simple.
That's right.
And we love the minister, respect him, but I don't put faith in him no more than I put it in the NAACP and Urban League, because it don't add up. That's plain, and I hate to say it, but that's the short truth of it. It don't add up.
All right, my brother. Thank you, John.
brother.
Appreciate it.
All right.
But there are brothers who would say, who are members of the nation, that, hey, it doesn't have to add up. It's just like the body. The most important part of the body is the brain, and instantly resources. When you digest food, the predominant nutrients. Most of the nutrients are used to nourish that nerve center, that brain. That's what uses up the most of our nutritional bounty, and it uses it, because it is the most necessary organ in our body, or one of the most necessary. Go back to the phones. Maurice, hey, my brother.
Hey, I couldn't wait to get in. How you doing, brother?
I'm well, man. I'm well. How you doing?
I'm blessed. I am very blessed, brother.
Yes, sir.
I wasn't going to call tonight and tell that guy with the talented tongue and the grossly inflated sense of self call. Here's what I would say to Brother Steve.
Oh, okay.
Every pyramid you see on this planet, I put it there. How many have you built? Moving right along.
Yes, sir.
The meeting at Chicago State. You have heard of the saying, if you want different results, you will have to do things differently?
Yes, I've heard that.
Most, if not all of our people are going to go right back to banking with the slave master's children, while spending sprees at their companies, their businesses and Arab businesses. And if you don't change that behavior, you will not matter in America.
Well, how do you change it, Maurice? It's a cultural orientation that you're talking about.
Education, organization, education. At one point, I didn't understand these dynamics, Salim. I was not always aware. It was the learning process.
Yes, sir.
So we have to count the money. I don't know how we're going to get it across, but it's going to have to be done. We're going to have to get it into our people's mind. You cannot continue to enrich and empower other people. We have to get ourselves economically empowered. And the next meeting, I got a great idea for it. Let's meet at the white banks. Pull all of our money out of the white banks and then meet at the black banks.
Well, I'm sorry. They're going to have a series of follow-up meetings. I would suggest they put you on the agenda, Maurice, so that you could raise these issues. And if they have merit, they certainly will be accepted, I'm sure, by folks. Well, how can they argue against them, right?
Well, follow the money.
Yes, sir.
You can't go wrong if you count the money. And if we don't come out of these meetings with the idea of creating a bank that's too big to fail for ourselves, you're going to see the same problems over and over because America runs on money, baby. That's it. I'm out of here.
All right. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate it. I hear what Maurice is saying. Let me read a little bit more from this vision statement here. The goal of the Congress will be to inform, educate, mobilize, and strategize toward a common agenda that will turn the tide on current socio-economic conditions affecting Black Chicago and serve as a foundation for further community action. What they're going to do, here are some of the bullet points. Mobilize all segments of the community of African descent to address these 9 issues that I spoke about earlier. And number 2, create a sustainable plan of action. Sustainable plan of action or an agenda designed to promote community engagement in those 9 issues. To increase unity and organizational capacity within the community of African descent in Chicago in order to bring resources and strength and numbers to bear in the 9 issues, that we talked about. And then promote ongoing activities in order to sustain engagement of the community in these 9 issues or other issues as they arise. Sounds good, huh? Sounds like a good plan, right? Well, we shall see. Let's go to James, my brother.
Oh, good evening, brother.
Good evening.
I'm still curious as to why a powerful medium like VON hasn't had any political commentary since Lou Palmer left. So I appeal to station management to bring back political commentary for our last days. Have you ever talked to Dr. Frances Cress Wesson?
I have talked to her, but not on the show. I've done an article on her.
Well, brother, it would be very nice if you would try to get her on for 3 hours before our last days here. This weather we are having is very suspicious. Before we had this weather, those people were spraying that stuff up in the air like 1 month straight. 3 and 4 planes running crisscross. And this is like monsoon season.
What are you talking about, in Oklahoma?
No, I mean, they were spraying it up. I can see the planes here, but these planes going all across state line. So I'm very suspicious of this weather. It looks like a monsoon season. Now, I hear people talking about white supremacist Mark Kirk, what he said about locking up 18,000 people, whatever.
Right.
But wasn't Dick Durbin the first one that came up with this and went to bring Mark Kirk in?
I think there is some complicity there between the two senators. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but I thought Durbin started.
I'm not familiar with the order of infamy, but I do know from what I was hearing today that they've combined on their efforts.
Right, but I don't hear the sheet bringing up Durbin. They just keep bringing up the white supremacist Mark Kirk.
Well, they were bringing up Durbin today.
Oh, I haven't heard them. Oh, anybody did it there, but I hear more about Kirk.
Okay.
Now, would you like for your colored president to comment on the biggest school massacre in world history?
Which is?
I mean, would you like him to comment on this? I mean, this is the biggest school massacre in world history.
You mean Chicago?
Would you like to hear how he feel about it, what he think about it? Or even his Secretary of Education, or whatever Duncan is.
Yeah, I'm sure that they would probably say, it's a local issue, and they would prefer not to intrude on those kinds of local issues.
A local issue, the biggest school massacre in world history. Again,
Well, you're being a little hyperbolic on that one, James. I mean, world history is pretty long, man, and there's schools all over the planet. We don't know.
You ever heard of 50 schools being closed anywhere?
Man, an entire. If you look at certain parts of Bangladesh, man, when they were East Pakistan, the entire educational system was shut down.
Might be. They didn't even have 50 schools. Let me say this, brother.
Okay, all right.
Let me say this. Malcolm X. Listen, people, ain't nothing new. Them people that had that little thing today, them people ain't serious. They not going up against white supremacy and imperialism. They ain't going up against them gangsters because they scared. Malcolm X told Dr. King.
Well, what should they do, though?
This is. Let me get to that.
Okay, go ahead.
Malcolm X, first thing they should do is tell the darn truth. I don't care if you can't bust a grape. The least you can do is speak the truth. Malcolm X told Dr. King in the 1960s. He told Dr. King, brother, this is not a civil rights struggle we are in here. He said this is a human rights struggle. Mm-hmm. We've been fighting a civil rights struggle ever since. That means, listen, we automatically lose. It don't mean the UN is going to help us. The man runs the UN, but the UN is a podium to let the world know what is happening to you here. That's why Chavez go there. That's why Iran go there. They know the white man run it, but they go there to tell the world, look what they doing to us. These people are committing genocide against us, and it's finna be a full-out assault. We are not even in the UN telling the world these people finna slaughter us. Everything they do to us is genocide. School, criminalizing us, slavery, everything they police killing. That boy killed down in Florida. That's a human rights violation. Police killed this boy in Calumet City. Young boy, shot him down like a dog. Human rights violation. What we do? We go to the civil court. You automatically lose.
Thank you, brother. I hear James. Good points,
Straight
brother.
ahead.
Yes, sir. Brother, we went to the UN. Brothers Willis took Attorney Willis took the case of Burge beyond the boundaries of this country, and we got some results. So Brother James is not off point when he talks about us expanding our grievance to a global level and make it a human rights issue rather than a parochial kind of civil rights issue. The brother's on point with that. We're going to come back and talk to some more folks who are on point right after this. 909, we're back. The Dells, Marvin Jr., Blow Harmony. If you ever wanted to know what Blow Harmony is, you just heard an example of it from the Dells, the mighty, mighty Dells. I hear you, Sambini. Let's go back to the phones. Tommy, hey, my brother.
Well, Salim, let's start this out with, I wish that I really would have been paying attention to Brother Gil Scott-Heron when he said that the revolution would not be televised, or that instead of getting high, I would have seriously been listening to the words of Marvin Gaye when he said, "Mercy, mercy, me, things that are not the way they used to be." I think it's something wrong when individuals come to the point that the only thing that they can turn around and do is tear down everything that has provided some margin of comfort in the community. I do not understand and cannot fathom in my mind why an individual would ever find themselves talking about Muslims the way I've heard it done tonight. It's absolutely absurd. Did the Muslims come up with any sort of legislation for the black community? Or did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad come and spit such profound knowledge that I believe that's why we just absolutely out of our minds? Because we have had individuals telling us as far back as 50 years ago, all of these things were coming down the pipe. And yet a Negro, when he finds himself in trouble, the first thing he wants to say is, what is the leader doing? And if the Honorable Minister Farrakhan cannot be sick without another Negro saying, I need to see your medical records, where truly have we gone to? I mean, it's the president, it's the Muslims, and don't forget the Christians, the stealing, preaching pimps that ain't responsible for the education system, or meeting that was held at Chicago State. Salim, how many more meetings do you have to go to figure out the state of anything as far as black people are concerned? How many?
Well, man, the state is, I'm sure that most of us can agree that the state, that we're in a declining state. The question is, how, what are the dimensions of the decline? What are the features of that decline, and what are the reasons for that decline? Once that's discovered, perhaps we can find a way to reverse it.
Try this: unthankful, unkind, uncaring, aloof, disconnected, don't give a damn, don't care, and as long as you ain't doing something for me, the hell with what you talking about. Because anytime you got somebody calling and saying, what did the president have to say about the historic closing of 50 schools rather than an entire city raising hell? And, let me bring it down. Because Salim, the reason why I love, and I could sit and listen to you for hours, see, they got the wrong people at these meetings. The wrong people are sitting up there at the microphone. And for as long as you have meetings where the only individuals that make sense are the notoriety of individuals, and not the least of these that are out there in the crowd who have very potent points, you're going to continue to have what you have. And really, if you really stop and look at it, the Bible says that if you search with Jesus with all your heart, you'll find the mystery of the ages. I say to black people that if you search for black people with all your heart, you'll find the mystery of the ages, that Negroes are still doing the same nonsense now as they were doing then, which was basically, hey, what have you done for me lately? And if you haven't done anything for me lately, then skip it. And the ancestors that went through all of the stuff that we have, the formula, Salim, it's right there. And I just am so sick and tired of hearing people knocking institutions. If you're looking to find something wrong, you will always find something wrong. They even go so far as to say what WVON should be doing.
Oh, yeah.
And if we didn't have WVON, Salim, as I close, where would we truly be? Where would any of us be if we didn't have this radio station? And we won't even support it. So I just close with this, Salim, because where we at right now, if we really want to change something, why don't we recognize and understand it's time to raise hell? It is time to go
and go to where these laws are being made. It is time for us to stop looking for leaders and start recognizing, if I go down, tomorrow is your turn. I love you, Salim. God bless you. And one last thing. Shut the hell talking up about Muslims. I am not one, but I can tell you how much I've learned from them. And the next thing, the church can never be your problem when there's more people than churches. Bless you, Salim.
All right, Brother Tommy. Yes, sir. A vote of confidence for the Nation of Islam, who receives many, many votes of confidence for the good work that they have been doing for all these many years. Not perfect, but much, much more perfect than we would be without them. Let's go to Chris. Hey, my brother, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, my man? How's it going?
It's all right.
You know, one thing we mention a lot, we mentioned the cultural. We look at our community and we compare it to other communities as why we're not as far progressive economically, and we often mention the cultural aspect.
Yes, sir.
But I actually would take it even further. Is not the cultural aspect is actually a byproduct of something else. Is that other communities have an influx of immigrants who are willing to work for less money. Therefore, since they're willing to work for less money, then capital is always being generated in those communities where the business owner could make a business grow. There's still people there working for less capital, and those people are bringing home money. So you always have a transition from this poor, working poor, middle class to upper middle class, because there's a continuation of people who's willing to go up that ladder. And so since there's people coming in from Poland, from Mexico, from China, that's the cultural aspect, but the actual economic aspect is that these people are willing to work. Whereas as Black Americans, we don't have that replenishing people who are willing to work for less wages. Therefore, the people, the working poor, is a very small amount of working poor who want to do a job. Whereas if I'm a business owner, I can rely on someone who's Black to come in and work, and then I could give them money, and I could still grow, and then I could, then that person wants.
You mean work for lesser wages? You mean?
Exactly, less wages, and less wages, and the reason why I thought about this, because I'm in the construction field, and I deal with lots of people that's Polish and Hispanic, and what they do is the people that they hire these people for $80, $90, $100 a day, and they're great workers, and they're willing to work for this amount. And so the business owner is able to grow and contract, and then he's able to grow his business. Then the person who's working, they're able to actually provide for their family, even though it's very minimum. They're able to provide for their family.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't have that aspect.
Well, that's true. I mean, there is a replenishing phenomenon that it comes from immigrant workers. And first of all, immigrants are generally the most entrepreneurial segment of the population anyway. Those are the ones who come here who are willing to leave their countries or their place of origin or their comfort zone in order to go somewhere else and try to make it. So they are generally the most adventurous anyway. But then they come with this cultural capital. But, we have that, Caribbean immigrants do that. So it doesn't really matter the color, as long as they come with that kind of connection, that familial connection, and that cultural orientation toward it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
I think you're right. Mm-hmm. And another element also, let me say, is that with Latinos or Hispanics, it's a language solidarity as well.
One time I was, I have a construction company, and I asked this Hispanic guy. I said, I need a carpenter. I just need a carpenter. I didn't tell him. I said I need a carpenter to work for me tomorrow. So he called this guy. I met the guy. He was a brother. A brother from Belize. And I said, I had him working for me and everything. He's doing per job. But I had him doing so much work. He said, you know what? I could just work for you, and I could bring my brother on, and we could work for you by the hour. I said, okay, fine. How much do you want to pay? How much do you want me to pay you? I left it up to them. And they said, you know what? We'll take $100 a day. And I didn't bring it up to them. They brought it up to me. And they wanted to work. They was Black guys from Belize.
Yes.
And so you look at that. I said, wow, this is how. And say I'm able to grow because I could charge less money than some of my competitors.
Yes.
I'm able to get business. I'm able to keep them employed, and then I could go and get other jobs. And so I think, if we could somehow create where we could, and I understand the unions and everything. I understand that. I definitely get that. But there's also have to be a balance where that we have to have some type of people who, if there people are willing to work for. And I know we get into something totally different, but if you're willing to work for a smaller amount, that will help people, that will help the business owner, and that will help the community. Because if I'm a solid business in the community, I'm showing other little black kids, hey, look, I can hire you because I have more capital.
Yes, sir. I hear you, brother. That's a reasonable option that you're talking about. I don't think it should be discarded. No doubt. I think it's a reasonable option.
Hey, I love your show, man. I listen to you. I always tell people about this show. This is one of the best knowledgeable shows. I mean, the reason why it's so good is because you can listen to people with different points of views, and it can make you think. It's lots of. I mean, people get upset with people's point of views, but if you listen to them, you have to listen because that's the only way you can grow is understanding different point of view and try to interpret them and everything. But it's great show, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Chris. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All right. Yeah, I hear what the brother's saying. Let's go to Kevin. Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Hey, brother Salim, how are you, man?
I'm well, man. Haven't heard from you in a while, my brother.
Hey, man, I've been taking it overtime, brother.
When
I've been listening, I can hear you at work.
All right.
And it's been fascinating. I usually find Steve from the North Side pretty interesting sometimes.
Yes.
I think, however, tonight I think that he's a tad bit condescending in regards to black scholastic acting. I got you. I would think, Salim, that any researcher would be quite familiar with dependent and independent variables. And I think black folk, us, we don't even have to be scientists, and we understand the parasitic relationship between the two.
Yes,
Steve,
sir.
I would have you know that we know what white wealth is. Let's call that our dependent variable. Why? And then that's a function of free black labor. That's our that's our independent variable. Okay? We get that. We know that one is a function of the other. Without the other, you couldn't get the other. And we also know what standard deviations are, Steve. Dorothy Tillman proved that when she traced or tried to chart or get current U.S. corporations to
pay up for slavery, for their participation in slavery. Yes, sir.
Sure. And we know that they all fell within 1, 2, or 3 standard deviations of a mean of 100% of either they were directly related, directly could trace their dollars back, or indirectly benefited from it. We know what those things are, and I think that it's kind of somewhat condescending, Steve, to just disregard all black study. Salim, especially in regards to some of the historical things that they considered science, for instance, the belief that the world was flat for years. And actually jailing Galileo when he decided that it wasn't.
That's right. That's right.
Or when you look at some of the biblical scholarship, and their belief that the world is only 6,000 years old, and then they can't explain why on the Giza Plateau you got something that's 3 times as old as Adam. It defies logic. But that's all I wanted to say, Salim, tonight. Because
well, I'm glad that you're back on the line, my brother.
Oh man, I'm listening all the time. It's great to hear all of the new contributors.
Yes, sir.
It's fascinating and it's fun, and it's also very enjoyable to sit back and listen.
Well, I appreciate your contribution, brother. Thank you. Don't stop making those contributions. All right.
You got it, bro.
All right, Kevin. Take care.
Later.
All right. Hey, and make sure that you guys stay tuned for Linnell Harris, Inspirational Perspectives, that comes on right after this show. Listen to that, brother, and help murder mediocrity. Okay, let's go back to the phones. Brother Fahim, my brother. How are you, sir? Saw you today, man.
Yes, sir. sir. I saw you and I heard you, and I want to salute you. I'm glad you emphasized that we have been through one of the most, not one of, the most
That's right.
Catastrophic events in human history that, of course, has culminated in America being the most powerful empire in the world, considering so many things, among them how rapidly America became a world power. But I want to say this about the state of Black Chicago. It was indeed very appropriate and necessary.
Yes, sir.
When you consider several things, among them being the recent report on CBS News on 48 hours program called
about
War
Chicago
in Chicago. War in Chicago. And, of course, what that is indicative of is the fact that the state of Black Chicago is a state of emergency. A state of emergency. And I think it's unprecedented. You talked about how we've had these forms before, but I don't think the state of emergency in the Black community has ever been as bad as it is now. And, of course, one of your earlier callers talked about the Hispanics, and I can tell you that their overpopulation is one of the contributing factors to there being a state of emergency in the Black community. And, of course, another indication is the insane, literally insane comments of Senator Kirk. Absolutely, it made absolutely no sense. And of course, several people at the forum, talked about how, last time we heard those kind of comments, they came from the mouth of a man named Adolf Hitler. But I think it's a wake up call. And like somebody on the
Fahim, sometimes I hear black folks make very similar comments. That we need to lock them all up, put them all away.
We're not prominent elected officials who should know better.
Well, that's right. You're right.
Black people, a lot of our people don't understand what political correctness is and political appropriateness is. But I wanted to say one of the things that I did not hear enough mention was about manhood and that we redefine or at least define manhood in our neighborhoods. And I
online for a question, man. I had to leave before the line ended up. Did you get a chance to ask your question?
No. Because they were short for time.
Okay.
But I wanted to, talk about, just what I just mentioned a moment ago. Manhood. We have to broach the sensitive subject of gender. We can't continue to bemoan, and I've said it before, the 5 E's, that black men, we're endangered, we're going to be extinct and exterminated, and we're not educated enough, and we're not employed enough. And I'm glad I've heard a few callers talk about, we built the pyramids. While they thought the earth was flat, didn't know how old the earth was. So my point being, black men, we have to start patting ourselves on the back. We've lived through the women's liberation movement. We are witnessing right now, right before our eyes, the gay liberation movement. So the next movement will be and has to be a men's liberation movement. We have got to go there. Our boys are crying out, and in New Jersey, they're proposing that sagging pants is illegal. Now, this was in the news yesterday. You see, other people are not going to tolerate what we have tolerated in the black community. I mean, this is kind of like what the Trayvon Martin incident symbolizes, and of course the brothers who were shot for supposedly playing their music too loud in that gas station when that white man shot them. Black men, we have to man up. We have to be what God meant for us to be. And that means we don't have to apologize to anybody about being men. And we cannot be preoccupied with what the plans of other people are for us, whether it be Kirk or anyone else. And I'm glad Bobby Rush stood his ground on that.
Yeah, he did. He did.
You know, that drama. But my point is...
Yeah, Bobby, you know, for those who weren't there, but Bobby Rush said that he was going to give Senator Kirk and Senator Durbin an assignment, a reading assignment, Michelle Wallace's book, The New Jim Crow, and he wants a book report on it when they see him again, and see if they can still, with a straight face, make those kinds of proposals of locking up 18,000 brothers after reading that book.
You know, I was wondering what would happen if Kirk were to say that he's going to lock up 18,000 Latin kings. I mean, you know, or some other ethnic group. But I think it's a sign and it's an omen to black men that, and you know, another question somebody brought up, and I can't wait to watch the tape on that. They talked about our insult level. Our insult level. You know, at one point do we say enough is enough over my dead body? And I think, you know, Malcolm got to that point when he said by any means necessary. And push is going to come to shove, man, because like I said, we are in a state of emergency. All of the signs are there. CBS, 48 hours, war in Chicago. So everybody's talking about Chicago, and of course, the 50 schools that was just shut down. I mean, this is deep, man, but I just, you know, thank you for standing your ground and reminding everyone that what we have been through is absolutely epic. Biblical proportions. And my final point, and one thing that I did not hear, was Black Wall Street. You know, I didn't, you know, I think the first panel was about business and economics, and I was listening to see if someone would remind us that, you know, we have been cheated. Actually, somebody did talk about how we excel at sports because, you know, the basket is, the rim is 10 feet high for, you know, for
Martin King, their brother from Operation Push, made that point.
Yeah, absolutely. But we, you know, Black Wall Street, we excelled, and it's, you know, a lot of people are kind of starting to connect the dots and say all of these tornadoes in Oklahoma is kind of strange, and a lot of people are saying maybe this is revenge for Black Wall. I've heard that on Al Sharpton's show, and a lot of people are saying, you know, it's a lot of strange
meteorological revenge, huh?
Well, it's very strange coincidences. God bless you, brother.
All right, my brother. Well, yeah, I mean, Tornado Alley. But there has been more violent weather, even in Tornado Alley. It's unusual, even for that part of the country. But then again, there are many folks who attribute that to climate change, the global climate change, the amount of carbon being emitted into the air, and that is causing shifts in the way weather patterns develop, and all of that. So. Whatever the reason, those folks in Oklahoma are ready for it to end. Let's go to Kay. Hey, Kay, how you doing?
Hi. Always on point. And you had me come on right after Fahim. Wednesday too.
All right. Hey, well, you want to refute him, don't you?
You know, I think he has an issue with women, but he did say something that made me think.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
If all these schools are being shut down, particularly in the black community, it's going to impact the HBUs, won't it? Because if the foundation isn't there, then they're not going to have a population. I mean, we're struggling as it is to get blacks to go to HBUs. I think it's even going to be more of a problem because they're not being prepared.
Well, that's if the dire predictions of those who say that these school closings will precipitate a decline in our educational quality. That you're right. But if on the other hand, the closing of these schools provides for a better educational opportunity for those who are still in school, and at the consolidated schools, if they do a better job of teaching than the other schools, then perhaps there'd be more available for these HBCUs. I think the jury is still out, as they say.
And then if you notice, Steve is forever calling and constantly he's like a typical liberal white person. He likes to flaunt his PhD in people's faces like he's the only educated person around. And notice he's targeting black people. I mean, how come I don't know if he
I think what he's targeting is what a lot of folks think is tangential scholarship that's designed for therapy rather than education, or rather than elucidation. That we're using academics as a form of psychological therapy to remedy a feeling of being left out for African Americans.
And unfortunately, I didn't attend State of Black. But the thing is that Tavis Smiley used to have those every year.
Yeah, he sure did.
Did it impact? Did him having those State of Black America elevate or impact the black community on the whole?
That's hard to say, Kay, because it's a good question, of course, but I think there are some aspects of it that we don't consider. One is that people used to have to pay to go to these things, and there will always be these large crowds. And generally, you couldn't get people to pay for an event unless it was entertainment oriented. And so to have a so-called intellectual gathering and have people clamoring to get tickets for it and pay for it, that's a positive thing as far as I can see.
It's a positive thing, but again, who's benefiting in terms of, maybe Steve can use his academics on this one, in terms of, you bring all these, you bring all these black people from all over the country. That means that hotels are being, rooms are being booked. Who owns those hotels? Food is being eaten. Which restaurants are you patronizing? And all these other things that impact the community, the city that they choose to have these conventions. And I'm just kind of curious, who's really benefiting from these State of Black America, or today was State of Black Chicago. Right. And Al Sharpton, he tends to have one, or he seems to have one once a year, State of whatever it is. But it's always it's like this crisis mode. I mean, that's how it's coming off of me. It's this crisis mode. Yes, it's crisis that Black America are in peril, and we need to come together and do something. But when you come together and do, what exactly are you doing? Because if you don't own the hotels that these people are booking, are staying at, or you have the restaurants and all these other things, who's, at the end of the day, who's benefiting? I mean,
that's a good question. That's a good question. Of course, the answer might be, well, we benefit as much as we can from what the infrastructure that's available. Like Tavis would say that when he goes to Houston to do his things, he books it at a black-owned venue because there is one available in Houston. If he wanted to come to Chicago and do it, perhaps there's not one available because they did come to Chicago and they did it at the Chicago Theater, and people raised that question then, and he said it wasn't a black venue available. Also, and then you have to look at some of the history of. Tavis published a book, The Covenant, which was a bestseller in the black community, and he deliberately chose a black publishing company, Third World Press, in order to do it, in order to publish the book. And so he went out of his way to benefit a black-owned institution, and he tends to do that. So I think if certainly
the intentions are right, but what happens after the event?
Well, I'm sure that's up to us. You know, I wasn't a fan of those events either. I thought that they were basically mic checks, as we say. You know, you give people have a little bit of time to impress the crowd, say some flashy rhetoric, and get people standing and shouting, and then that means that they did a good job. But it doesn't really impart any useful knowledge, and it doesn't provide any kind of enduring commitment for folks who want to commit. So I mean there are certainly ways to criticize those events, but some of those events produced ideas that bore fruit later on. I can't cite chapter and verse, but I have heard Tavis talk about some of the ramifications of those events in other cities and how people have benefited from them. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But I hear what you're saying. But and as I pointed out today, I've been to hundreds of them, or at least 100 of them, and I have yet to see much of a benefit. But I've benefited from them. I learned something from them, so other people may have learned something as well.
You know what? I was curious. Did they put it on the line? You remember, like when Tavis came here? I think he was in Chicago State when
yes, he
I
was.
think Dorothy
I was there,
and some of those people like on that round table. Did they? And then so if you weren't able to attend, at least you could watch it online.
It's on YouTube. You could find there are a lot of excerpts of it on YouTube.
Oh, okay, but not like a set channel, and you can just watch it from.
I'm not sure. Perhaps Tavis has a setup in which you can do that.
No, I'm talking about the thing today.
Oh, today. Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they recorded it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure you have a large audience, so if they did, please call Salim and let us know so we can watch it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, Kay. Thank you.
Talk to you Wednesday.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Kay. I'm gonna before we go off, I'm gonna read a little bit of some of the remarks that I kind of prepared, for this thing today. I didn't deliver them, but I wanted to get my thinking on the right line, and so I did. I kind of wrote up a blueprint of thought. Items of little items that I thought were important, and I'll go over a little bit of that before we finish up this evening. Let's go to Roy. Hey, Roy, how you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'd just like to mention some ancient history by I consider the father of black history, J.A. Rogers from the old Pittsburgh Couriers.
Oh yeah. J.A. Rogers, yes, sir. Great many books. Superman the Man, the African. Give me some titles of the books that he's written.
Race and Sex, 3 volumes.
Yes, sir.
And it shows it talks about the black presence in Europe, Paris, France. Was the seat of the temple to Isis, where Paris now stands.
Yeah, yes, sir.
The Grimaldi Venus.
Mm-hmm.
But he wrote a 3-volume series called Race and Sex.
Mm-hmm.
J.A. Rogers.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he is really a father of black history.
Well, he certainly is.
Prehistoric history.
And he was one of the first. He's the one who kind of established the kind of autodidact tradition of black historians. The one that others took up on, like we were just talking about John Jackson and other scholars who were self-taught, really, who didn't go through the academia.
We can't be anything but self-taught, because we ain't going to get it from the dominant society.
Yeah, well, that's true. You got a point there, brother.
Okay.
That's it?
Thanks for the I just wanted to contribute.
Well, thank you, man. J.A. Rogers is a good author to mention. Thank you for mentioning him.
Okay, thank you.
And J.A. Rogers did write a regular column for the Pittsburgh Courier before he wrote a lot of these books. One of the more influential books, Man to Man, and when he talks about black Pullman porters and some of the things that they had to endure and the knowledge that they brought to the job, and just a magnificent author who had a lot of issues that he exposed, and you know, a lot of African Americans had no idea of what he was talking about. Let me just read, Brother Ray. I'm gonna come to you in a minute, man. I just want to read a little bit of this stuff I was sketching out for my thoughts. So after nearly 50 years of engagement in the Black Freedom Movement, explored from a variety of perspectives and ideologies, I've come to the conclusion that perhaps the most responsible position to take is one that focuses on making the case for a massive compensatory effort akin to the Marshall Plan to raise Black America from its state of stasis in the 9 issue areas that were identified by the organizers of the Congress, the State of Black Chicago Congress. And I realize that this focus may be a bit tangential to the spirit of independent self-sufficiency that infuses the Congress, but I think it would be an act of intellectual malfeasance if I neglected to emphasize this crucial point at such a significant gathering. It's my opinion that one of the primary reasons for our lack of progress in these 9 problem areas is our lack of cultural capital. And what do you ask, do I mean by that? Well, cultural capital is a socialized mandate to cultivate behavioral traits and habits of mind that encourage social success. Differing peoples accumulate this valuable quality in various ways, according to their specific histories. And African Americans often bemoan the fact that other ethnicities, which often include recent immigrants, that they come to this country and they pass us by on their way to the American dream. One of our callers made this point a little earlier. But what we don't identify is the cultural capital they bring to the table. They come to this, many immigrant groups come to this country fortified with values honed from centuries of autonomous social interactions. Their traditions impart to them an ancestral narrative in which they are the protagonists in their story of civilization. And that tends to confer a psychological immunity against bigotry, and it bolsters their social confidence and their sense of destiny. And of course, we all know that enslaved Africans and their progeny had little opportunity to construct that kind of autonomous, nurturing culture. We were severed from our ancestral traditions and obliged to construct a culture to respond and adapt to racist oppression and white supremacist institutions. Now, let's go to Ray. Hey, Ray, how you doing, brother?
How you doing there, Brother Salim?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well.
I was trying to comment on Al Sharpton, but since they tried to come too hard on Brother Farrakhan, I got to change the pace. I'm with Brother Tommy on that.
Okay.
You know, it's absolutely no brother I respect more than Brother Farrakhan.
Okay.
But look at their critics, though, brother. You know, what kind of name would you say jihad is? You say that's a Muslim or Islamic like name?
It is. It's an Islamic name. It's an Arabic name. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we all know what jihad means nowadays, right?
Right. So what would you call Rahim, whatever the brother name?
Fahim.
Okay. What would you call that?
That is also an Arabic name. Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm on point now.
Yeah, you.
These guys run around with Muslim names and they dissing Muslims to show you how silly they are. You know, what fascinated them so was when they took their names on. See, I always thought that they was rejects of the Nation of Islam.
Well, I think
see, they've been in the Nation of Islam. They wasn't maybe certified in that, but they've been studying with them brothers.
Oh yeah, a lot of these brothers are former members, or at least former admirers. Islam for African Americans, man, it has always been connected on this side of the ocean. It's always been connected with an anti-slavery movement. It was a slave-breaking religion. And on the other side of the Atlantic, it may have been a slave-making religion.
But see, that's why when they came, they tried to ambush Brother Munir Muhammad, brother Mike Jihad Rahim. They knew he was coming on the Taj Strolls show as a regular. They tried to ambush him. He blew him out of the water, brother. And he threatened to expose him. He said, I know these men. So I been knew they was down there learning from them brothers. Like Brother Farrakhan been on the air 6 o'clock in the morning on like 36. You better believe they listen to him. They learning from him, but then they turn back around and try to diss the man.
Yes,
but
sir.
they're too afraid, too much of a coward to come in there to the station. Why don't they? So that's what I'm saying. Why don't they have their own organization? What have they done? They have done absolutely nothing for black folks. But they listen to WBON and learn from you all. I've learned from you all. That's just like me saying, Brother Maceo been talking the same crap for 3 years. I learned from Maceo.
Yes, sir.
You know, I've learned from you. I've learned from Michelle. I learned from Sister Anita. You know, these are some brilliant people. Brother James. These people about tribute to their own destruction and they don't even know it. What other brother we got out here?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, man. I think that we are a little bit too quick to criticize folks who don't agree precisely with our prescription on what we should be up to.
Well, that's how the other brother is from Detroit. He's a little different. He fits that prescription. You know, the one that talked about Malcolm in Detroit. But these other guys are just, man. You know, they make you think somebody paying them to do this, brother. But they just totally. Coming after the nation, and then they're too afraid to come into the station, get their own station, get their privately owned spot, get their own talk show, get a storefront, but they can sit back where they have the advantage and take sniper shots, but they can't answer no questions. They would never be able to sit in that seat that you're sitting in. It take a lot of guts, brother. I've never done it, but it takes hard to sit in that seat, man.
You telling me, bro.
and that brother, what's his name, Michael Wallace, I went to a couple of his meetings to sit up there and take
Mark Wallace,
questions.
yes, sir.
You put yourself, exposing yourself. But these guys sit down and answer any question, but they can sit back and learn from us, you all, and take cheap shots at the guys like that. Why don't they tell it to Farrakhan was on there? They don't do. They wait till he's gone, then they come and say some things.
I'm trying to recall if Brother Michael has ever called while the minister was on the air.
He's too afraid, man. He's a coward, man. He'll never show himself up. He tried to jump on Brother Munir Muhammad, brother. He blew him out of the water.
When Munir was on when Munir used to come on Todd Stroger show?
Yeah, he was coming on as a regular, and it was too much of a coincidence. They calls came back to back. First was Raheem, then it was Mike DeHaan. Like they was over the same, maybe it was the same house at the same time. Or they called them.
And so they were criticizing they were criticizing the nation or what?
Really the nation, and what he done, he blew him out of the water. He let them get the first punch in, and he told the man, he told Mike, anything you did, you failed at it, and on, man, the man can do nothing, man, but retreat.
All right.
So just come on in the station, man, and go ahead and say what you got to do, man. Face the people, face to face. Don't hide behind the phone, Mike Jihad and Raheem. Go head up with him, man. The man Munir called you out. Go ahead and go head up with the man, brother. You have a good day, brother.
All right, thank you, Ray. Appreciate it, brother. See, this is the thing. Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam in its various incarnations and iterations has a lot of very, very strong followers in the black community. And so, I mean, they have a way of responding to these critiques of folks. At the same time, I don't think we should dismiss these folks' critiques. I mean, there are a lot of people who have critiques, and many of them are afraid to make them. This brother Ray says that Michael and Fahim are cowards in some way, but in some ways, they are breaking a taboo, because a lot of folks just don't want to criticize the Nation of Islam because they know that there's a lot of very strong advocates out here who would kind of take their heads off if they were to criticize Elijah Muhammad or Minister Louis Farrakhan. And so these guys are at least willing to put their opinions out there that may disagree with others who are strong supporters. And so, you have to, I think you have to respect that dissent. You have to counter it in an effective way, but you certainly have to respect it. Let me read just a little bit more from some of these bullet points that I had. I say that we had to respond, our culture had to respond and adapt to racist oppression and white supremacist institutions. Although, when we just had a sliver of autonomy, like in Tulsa, Rosewood, Beale Street, countless other black towns and villages that we developed post-slavery, we quickly accumulated that cultural capital, and we developed relatively thriving communities. And this is despite the opposition that was always around. Sometimes it was violent opposition. And I realize that many of us are aware of this history and now demand that we stop using it as an excuse for our lack of progress. And I agree that a reliance on the history made me do it argument opens the door for a lot of excuses. But I think there's a greater danger in us denying the traumatizing effects of our American socialization, and we get lost in the symptoms, as I was talking about earlier. You know, we see the crime, we see our people in prison, and we, just as a lot of white Americans, we think that that's a state of nature. We get lost in these systems. We don't understand that there are socialized reasons for this. We might actually endorse something like the unconstitutional dragnet that Senator Mark Kirk is suggesting. Or, we can get hung up in the intricacies of concealed carry or some other provisional strategy, if that's going to be our salvation. And when we do this, we elide the reality that the kidnapping and the enslaving of millions of Africans and their progeny was an act of monumental savagery and enormous consequence. Indeed, the UN declared it one of the greatest crimes against humanity in recorded history. And African Americans, who are the victims of this epic crime, we suffered a civilizational trauma that was absolutely unprecedented in history. Our ancestral narratives were erased, and our transformation into a commodity. We must come to grips with the reality that African Americans, as a specific population of the African diaspora, were actually created by slavery. The only reason we are in this land is that we were needed to tote that bar and lift that bale. And our hyphenated identities were weren't just dual, they were dueling. We had dueling identities. The African was in a duel against the American. And we were denied the opportunity to accumulate economic and cultural capital because of this unique history as a race-specific chattel. You may say, all right, we know all that, but what now? And what I say to that is that we don't know all that. We don't know what we've gone through. We've forgotten that trauma. We look at our reality and we see black inmates in our prisons, although we're just 12% of the population. And we look at this, as I say, as if it's a state of nature. Yet we should be in a state of perpetual protest against this injustice. But if we listen to some of our radio shows and all we hear are incessant complaints about black criminals, there have even been some attempts to brand them as terrorists. It's as if we bought into the notion that there is something inherently criminal about our folks. So that's kind of where I was coming from in this, is that, we tend to have forgotten the context of our situation. And if we do that, we will increasingly turn on each other because we'll continuously be lost in the symptoms of our victimization. We can say that we weren't victims and adopt an attitude that negates our victimhood, or even makes an attempt to paper it over, or whatever we may do. But until we understand the depths of the trauma we went through and make some attempt to repair it, I mean, that's the only way we're going to do it, is to repair that trauma, and that will, I think, set us on the road to more healthy relationships, interpersonal relationships, as well as political relationships. We can do it. We have to just make sure that we make the points strongly, focus on the fact that we need to regenerate our communities with resources. We can't do it without resources. The Marshall Plan made it plain to us that no matter how noble our aspirations may be, without resources, the job of rebuilding is damn near impossible. And so I think we have to get on a unified message that resources